Richard is a seasoned museum director, curator, and art historian. He's guided the acquisition of major works for art for over 30 years. His experience ranges from old masters and 19th century paintings and drawings to modern and contemporary art, architecture, and design. He's advised public and private collections around the country. Townsend's been featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, the Chicago Tribune, Michigan Avenue Magazine, and its Modern Luxury men's book, and has made appearances on many different TV shows, Paula Zahn with CBS Monday Morning, and Martha Techner, among other broadcast media outlets. Townsend has served as a director or a senior official at art museums around the country, from New York and Miami to Los Angeles and Chicago, including the Perez Art Museum, Miami, Museum of Latin America, Long Beach, California, the Museum of Biblical Art, New York, and the Richard H. Driehaus Museum of Chicago, which is his most recent position as the director of the museum. Townsend received his BFA from the Virginia Commonwealth University and earned his master's in art history at the Institute of Fine Arts, New York University. He's also served as an adjunct professor of art history at the University of Tulsa. And today we are so honored to have him here for our inaugural in-series lecture, and he will take it away. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Paula. It's such a pleasure to be here. It's a real honor to be here at the beautiful Evanston Art Center. I want to thank Paula, Leslie, and Debbie for bringing me here. It's, again, a real privilege. So, welcome to my talk, The ABCs of Art Collecting. And in a few easy steps, you'll learn how to collect art. No, I hope to give you a little insight, though, on the joys and the challenges of collecting art. Let me just start off. The art scene, dazed and confused. That's not the art scene being dazed and confused. I'm dazed and confused sometimes in the art scene. But who can blame me? International art fairs, velvet rope parties, auction sales rooms, galleries across the world, art exhibitions everywhere, what to look at, what to see. And then there are those aloof gallerists, enigmatic artists, and jargon-spouting curators and art advisors. Not me, of course, but there are those. So at any rate, I hope to just demystify a little today the whole process of collecting art, looking at art, and then collecting it. So first of all, why should I be the one to tell you, or at least share with you, how to collect art and what to look for? Well, let me tell you a little about the education of an art advisor. And this is my personal background that has formed me and my eye, well, ever since, don't laugh, but I remember my first museum visit when I was 5. My parents often kidded me about it because I apparently created quite a scene. And I bought my first work of art at 7. My parents were collectors and artists and really creative types and wonderful people. And this is where it really comes from. But let's fast forward, shall we? Since 7 years old, let's move on to my early career as a museum curator and then as a museum director. On the left, you see the beautiful Philbrook Museum of Art, and that's the Villa Philbrook in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I was curator of European and American art for over a decade. And there you see the garden facade. You see that you think you're in Tuscany, and in fact, the Brunelleschi-like architecture of the arched arcade and the Italianate gardens that seem like you're at the Villa Lante outside Rome. This all adds up to this amazing Italianate setting that houses, or that is site to inside a beautiful collection of Italian old masters, mainly given by the Crest Foundation in the 1960s. So I'm going to expound on Italian art a bit when I talk about forming a public collection. But this was the setting for that, and quite logically so. On the right, you see the Museum of Biblical Art, where I was director in New York City for some years, At 61st and Broadway, you see the tower of the building. The museum is on the second floor, and there you see an exhibition banner for sculpture in the age of Donatello, Renaissance masterpieces from Florence Cathedral. It sadly was the swan song to the Museum of Biblical Art. It was a tremendously well-respected and really compelling program well before, of course, I came, and I was honored to be director and ended up the last director because of the real estate market. We lost our home, you see in the tower there at 61st and Broadway, due to the overheated real estate market. So sadly, the museum, the building was sold, the museum was closed. It didn't have a permanent collection. But it was, for 15 years, it was this really amazing program with tremendous insights regarding the important impact of the Bible on Western visual tradition. So at any rate, that is, and I directed and have served at museums in Miami, Los Angeles, and of course now, most recently in Chicago. So that was my career trajectory to this point. Building public collections, as I was just citing, at the Philbrook Museum, I show you two examples of works of amongst the many works that I acquired for the Philbrook Museum of Art in Tulsa. And on the left, you see a really terrific 19th century bronze sculpture by Vincenzo Gemito, the Neapolitan sculptor, the acquaiolo, the water bearer. And you see this young Neapolitan ragamuffin offering you a drink of water perched atop an ancient Roman well spout. On the right, you see a great rediscovered masterpiece by Bernardo Strozzi, the Italian Baroque master of Genoa and Venice. This was a major rediscovery, as I said, I acquired on the London art market for the museum. It was within 2 years, and in doing my research, I found the preparatory drawing for the face of St. Francis, as you see him ecstatically gazing towards heaven. I found the preparatory drawing in the collection of the Getty Museum in LA. The painting was featured shortly after we acquired it. It was featured in the first US exhibition on Strozzi. It was published as the cover on the catalog to that exhibition. It was published in the Italian monograph on the artist, the first since the 1960s. It was a really exciting, as I say, rediscovery and was an important work of art to come to light. These are the sorts of things that I acquired for the Philbrook and were part of my forming a public collection there in Tulsa. Moving on, my first directorship was nearby in the old oil town of Bartlesville, Oklahoma at Price Tower Art Center. The Art Center is housed to this day, of course, in Frank Lloyd Wright's only fully realized skyscraper. And you see there on the left, and you see the building rising up on the left. But in the foreground, you see major outdoor sculpture we commissioned from Robert Indiana. And this is his 66, and this had a lot of meaning. Interestingly enough, Bob, his father, and much of his artwork, certainly his early artwork, was consumed with his family background and his mother and father. And of course, then this sort of enigmatic series of numbers and letters that had very deeply personal meaning that he arranged and rearranged in various compositions in painting. And then, of course, you know, one of his first great letter designs, originally for a Christmas card for MoMA, but of course became a great outdoor sculpture, the love sculpture, L-O-V-E. And then he moved on to numbers and began creating outdoor sculptures with numbers. And so we commissioned Bob to do the 66. Now, why 66? Phillips 66. Bartlesville, Oklahoma was the headquarters for Phillips Petroleum. And of course, the iconic Route 66 that went through Oklahoma, very nearby between Bartlesville and Tulsa. And I remember as a kid, my parents and I taking family trips on Route 66. And of course, you had the Phillips 66 stations dotting Route 66 and elsewhere. So this was a really marvelous homage to that, and was deeply personal, of course, to the artist as well. So that was a major commission of work by one of the leading contemporary artists, one of the leading artists of our day. Of course, Bob passed away a few years ago. On the right, you see an acquisition I made for the Museum of Latin American Art in Long Beach, California, in LA, and that is Ana Sacerdote. She is still living, she's ancient, but incredibly accomplished Italian emigre to Argentina, like you think of Lucio Fontana and his parents. She remained in Buenos Aires, unlike Fontana, and she participated in the geometric abstraction movement. And there you see one of her really gorgeous compositions. This was acquired at Pinta, Latin American Art Fair in New York City in 2010. And again, so as an example of, on the left, you have an artistic commission. On the right, you have a new acquisition discovered at an art fair. So that's a little glimpse into my building public collections. But now, let me talk a little about advising private collectors. As a museum director and curator, I had the opportunity to do so numerous times, such as on the left, this is a great story. This is in a private Tulsa collection. And there's Penitent Magdalene by a 17th century painter named Giovanni Baglione. Baglione was well known as not an artist. I mean, he was actually quite a good artist, but he's best known today as a writer, as a critic and a biographer of artists. And most importantly, he wrote about one in particular in Rome around 1600. Who would that have been? Of course, Caravaggio. And in fact, they had a falling out. But as you can see from his style, he really depended on Caravaggio's light and dark style in a very dramatic way. So how did this Tulsa collector come to buy Italian Baroque paintings? Well, I got a call one day, and this fellow said on the phone, you know, I'm really thinking about starting to collect art as an investment. I'm really interested in this, something for my children, and I want to enjoy it while I do it. And I was thinking about American Impressionism. I said, well, that's great. And I had just been fresh off mounting an exhibition of American Impressionist pictures from a very important private American collection. And so, you know, I was certainly sympathetic, but I said, that's great, and we could do that, but I'd be really happy, you know, let's just think about it. But I think there are more undervalued areas, and this is something we'll try to touch on a little more in a while. And I said, why don't you look at Italian Baroque pictures? Now, of course, I was actively in the market for the museum. You saw the Bernardo Strozzi that we bought. And so I said, why don't you think about this? There are some real deals out there. And he did. He got very excited about it. So we ended up buying a number of Italian Baroque pictures for this Tulsa collector. On the right, you see a work by Herman Gomez. He is a Madrid-based artist who works between photography and sort of multimedia. This is a work from 2007, and I got to know Herman's work in 2007 at an art fair in Basel, Switzerland. Now, this is something as a museum official I would do. I would take I would take patrons to art fairs, and we would, you know, hit, there was Art Basel Miami, or the Armory Show in New York, or in this case, Art Basel in Switzerland. So we were at Art Basel, and one of its satellite fairs, Scope, had a stand in which Herman's work was featured. And one of my charges, one of the patrons on the trip, is an international collector and collects international contemporary art. And I was giving her a report on, I had just seen what I had just seen on this stand. This was a terrific artist, Herman Gomez, this Spanish guy who looks really promising. And she was so taken. She says, I want to go by the stand and meet him, because the artist happened to be there. So that's what we did. And she was as convinced as I was of his talent, and immediately bought some work off the stand. I too have collected Herman Gomez's work personally, but at any rate, that's another aspect of how one advises collections and collectors. So also a part of my background is publishing, research, publishing books and articles. And I show you two of my most recent publications. On the left is the catalog for the exhibition I organized for the Driehaus Museum, Yinka Shonibare, CBE, A Tale of Today. And this was an exhibition of, this publication and the exhibition featured Yinka's work in the setting, the Gilded Age settings of the Driehaus Museum. More on that in a moment. This catalog featured an interview I did with the artist in his London studio. And also on the right, Alexander Kerinx, the painter of forests, Der Baummaler. This is 17th book, first monograph ever on the 17th century Flemish landscape painter. I actually wrote my thesis on him and was invited to contribute to this first ever publication by the leading scholar on Kerinx today, Ursula Herting. So this also should, I hope, give you an idea of my range from old masters on the right to contemporary artists on the left. And finally, part of my makeup is organizing, having organized major exhibitions. And one I would point out, I just mentioned to you, A Tale of Today, Yinka Shonebare, CBE. You can see these amazing installations by Yinka in the rich Gilded Age interiors of the Nickerson Mansion, which is today known as the Richard H. Driehaus Museum. You see his boy riding a unicycle on the left, the great sculpture called Big Boy, you see on the right in the library, and that was, or in the gallery rather, and that was lent by the Art Institute of Chicago. And a final installation shot, this is hard to beat. This is Shonebare's Party Time, Reimagine America, and this is really what the show is about. You see these racially indeterminate, tawny colored, skin-colored mannequins wearing African print textiles. So these are clues as to the racial background of these figures, of these actors in this space. These are guests who would not normally have been welcome in a space like this, in the glorious dining room of the Nickerson Mansion. And this was the whole idea, was to rewrite history, reimagine a more equitable America. And this was the whole point to our doing this exhibition, was to create some space for parity and equity in this Gilded Age, splendid Gilded Age mansion. And it really opened up new horizons for the museum, brought in new audiences. Last I will share with you that I'm very proud of was sculpture in the age of Donatello, Renaissance masterpieces from Florence Cathedral. This is an opportunity. You see here an installation shot of the exhibition in New York City in 2015, where we brought some just unparalleled opportunity because of the closure of the Museo dell'Opera del Duomo for expansion, to bring over some of their masterpieces. You see in the foreground, on the left, the actual models for the dome that Brunelleschi designed for the cathedral. You see at the very back a monumental sculpture by Donatello. And I can't resist but show you two more of the amazing sculptures by Donatello, the Abraham and Isaac on the left, and Il Zuccone, the pumpkin head, or the prophet Habakkuk on the right, one of the great sculptures in Western art history. It was a great privilege to work on the show, and it was well received and a tremendous sort of capstone to the Museum of Biblical Art. So whether at a museum or working with an individual client, I remain committed to making people's lives better through that transformational moment when we engage with a work of art. So it doesn't matter whether I'm working through and at a museum or individually with a person who wants to collect. It's all about enhancing one's life and making one's life and society as a whole better. Now for the ABCs of art collecting. You never thought I'd get to it. Well, and by the way, I just want you to know, and you will breathe a sigh of relief right now, I didn't get all the letters of the alphabet covered. I was trying. V was very difficult. Y was impossible. So at any rate, you're going to get most, but not all. A is for affordable. So this is really terrific. I don't know why that's not showing up on the left. Is it showing up on the left? Is there a... Oh, well, that's a disappointment. You see it here on the screen, at least. You might want to take a shot of that. I don't know why the PowerPoint isn't showing. On the left is a Nan Goldin photograph. Nan Goldin, one of the great commentators of the scene, the New York scene in the 80s and 90s. And this was a photographic print that was available for $150 in an online benefit sale. It just parenthetically, it was for States of Change, a political fundraiser. It was online for a couple of days, and you could buy an Ed Ruscha, you could buy an Alfredo Jarre, you could get a Cindy Sherman, and a lot of artists that I hadn't heard about, but you could for $150, non-edition, not signed, but be that as it may, and for a good cause to get out the vote. So I was really, really excited about that opportunity. It can be affordable. Another affordable opportunity. On the right, this is an artist, Kirsten Valentine, with the Zig Gallery here in Chicago. This painting could be had for $650. It's an oil on panel painting. She had examples available at the Zig Gallery for less than $300. You just can't get better than that. And clearly, Valentine is an accomplished artist. Her show is up at Zig Gallery, by the way, to the end of the week. I'd encourage you to go see it. So A is for affordable. B is for blue chip. So we go from affordable to not affordable. But you got to see, I want to show you all aspects of, or as many as I can, of collecting and the art scene. So B is for blue chip. Now on the left you have an artist who's very important to Chicago, and that is Anish Kapoor. You see one of these amazing sculptural installations of him that you get lost in the void of, you experience the sublime, and this will set you back several millions of dollars. On the right, you have Andy Warhol's Marilyn, one of the Marilyns, in a screen print. It's going to be cheaper than a painting, of course, but a painting will set you back 30 or 40 million or so. So blue chip means very established, no risk, in terms of if we're looking at this as an investment. C is for artists of color. This is a really important and exciting area right now in collecting, and that is looking at, and this is what we were doing at the Driehaus Museum with Yinka Shonibari, and they have the present show, which I will talk about, but artists of color are increasingly coming to the attention of the market, and long overdue. On the left, you have a well-established artist, Nick Cave. Again, I've tried to orient this as much to Chicago as I could. And Nick, of course, lives here and works here in Chicago, teaches at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And there, here on the left, you have one of his 2010 sound suit from 2010. It's performative sculpture, and it has all these rich layers to it. You think about Nick's years in New York as a dancer at Alvin Ailey, as part of the New York club scene. You think about, he creates these sound suits as protective environments and performative environments indeed. But when one wears this, you don't know the person's race, gender, economic background. It shields you, it protects you, but it's also this outward exuberant expression. And some of them are slightly disturbing too. It's very complex and beautiful. That's Nick Cave on the left. On the right, you have Teresa Margolles, a Mexican artist who was trained as a forensic pathologist. And let me just tell you a little about this scene on the right. Is a shot of the installation of her, of what she did for the Mexican pavilion at the 2009 Venice Biennale. The installation, curated by a really talented curator, Guatemala Medina, was what else can we talk about? And what they were talking about there, what they're mopping the floors. Because of her background in forensic pathology, she has used the detritus of destruction, the detritus of violence, blood, bullet-ridden doors, walls with barbed wire. This is, Teresa here is working with blood and water, and the floors are being mopped with the blood, this mixture of blood and water of slain victims of the narco wars in Mexico. So this is a very trenchant political comment. And in fact, the person mopping the floor with the blood of these victims is the relative of one of the victims himself. Indeed, what else can we talk about? This is something we must talk about. We could speak of so many other artists of color that are worth looking at: Theaster Gates, or Kara Walker, or Pedro Reyes, or and the list goes on and on. D is for diversified portfolio. So most of us have heard the phrase art as an investment, but what does this really mean? Art is now generally regarded as an asset class, one which allows an interested investor yet another option in which to invest their money. E is for emerging artists. So we're going to talk about, we just talked about artists of color. This is another, which is a really critical area of collecting right now. Again, long overdue. Emerging artists is another group within the market. And this is, sort of very early on. On the left, I show you, and I'm really happy to say I can talk about artists of color in this category as well, because both of these artists, on the left, Jake Troyley, and on the right, Brittany Leanne Williams. You have on the left Jake's terrific take on, can anyone guess it? The Mona Lisa. And he paints in this pop funk sort of style. He has a show that's still on till the end of the week at Monique Meloche. I encourage you to go see. But this knowing reference to the Mona Lisa and her auteur and enigmatic expression, Jake, pulls out beautifully, and even replete with the fantastical landscape background. On the right, Brittany's work here. She was one of our fellows at the Treehouse Museum's first annual Young Emerging Artists of Color Fellowship Program. So she was one of the 2019 fellows. And Brittany's work, she's even a little more down the road than Jake is. I mean, she's held several prestigious fellowships. She's painting sort of all over the country. She hails, I think still from Chicago, but her painting is voluptuous and sensuous and rich. So these are two very promising emerging artists, young artists just on the cusp of a career. So F is for fairs. There is a plethora of international art fairs, from Art Basel itself in Switzerland, that's sort of the mothership, and its satellite fairs in Miami and Hong Kong, to TAFOF in Maastricht and New York, to domestic shows, as in shows here mounted in the United States, such as the Armory Show and Frieze, both are in New York City. TAFOF stands, by the way, for the European Fine Art Fair. Chicago has its own major international art fair, and that is Expo Chicago. So stay tuned for that. They've rescheduled that from last month to this coming April 2021. G is for galleries. While New York is often still considered the center of the art world and hosts some of the world's leading commercial galleries, Chicago has its own galleries and an amazing selection, from the distinguished to the cutting edge. There's Richard Gray Gallery, Kavi Gupta, Rona Hoffman, Monique Meloche, whom I've just mentioned to you. That's a shot, an installation shot of Jaume Plensa, the artist, another artist featured at Millennium Park, an installation at Gray Gallery. I encourage you to, and this is just a tiny list. There's Volume, Patron, so many other really fine galleries here in Chicago. I encourage you to go out and look. They are open. I is for Impressionist Modern. Keep in mind, these are sectors of the art market we're talking about. This is one of the most blue chip there is. Still the highest valuations here, and in the well-established sort of post-war field we're coming to. But I is for Impressionist and Modern. On the left is an Henri-Joseph Arpigny, 19th century French landscape painter. This is the train bridge at Briare, which is north central France, dated 1888. It's a picture that I bought for the Philbrook Museum in the late 1990s for about $40,000. You can get Arpigny for much more and a little less these days. But again, Arpigny is painting alongside, he's a precursor. His movement as a Barbizon painter, painting out in nature, in plein air, out of doors, is fundamental, is predicate to the Impressionists. But of course, by the third generation and Arpigny, they're painting alongside the Impressionists. One would have not existed without the other. So it was a very good buy and a very fine picture. On the right, you have Pablo Picasso, of course, that giant that towers over the 20th century. You have an impression of his buste de femme d'après Cranach le Jeune. This print was, this impression, 15 out of 50, was just sold last week at Christie's in New York for, are you sitting down? $700,000. So I'm showing you the gamut. This is, hey, I've shown you a $150 print. I'm showing you a $700,000 print. But this is one of the great, it's really his first great lino cut. And so this is, you see the sort of the gamut between Impressionist and modern works of art from 40,000, at least 20 years ago, to 700,000 just last week. L is for look. So you know this, Chicago has a wealth of museums which present a spectacular roster of special exhibition, temporary exhibitions, of course, in addition to the great permanent collections on view, whether that would be at the Museum of Contemporary Art or the Art Institute of Chicago. Its current show at the Art Institute is Monet and Chicago, which explores the relationship between the artist and our city. And it is something that where you can go, half of the pictures in Monet in Chicago are private collection loans. And I am told were bought in the past couple of decades. You can acquire a Monet today if you wish, but this is something that is within the realm of possibility. Maybe not the great Gar Saint-Lazare from the collection of the Art Institute of Chicago you see on the right, but there are tremendous finds and opportunities available even today. So I say educate your eye, look and learn. M is for old masters. So this is yet another component, another area in the art market. And old masters have been undervalued for a really long time. I might spend just a moment or two on this because on the left I show you a painting that I acquired for the Philbrook Museum in the late 90s. It is by Simone Barabino. And no, I know you've never heard of him. I hadn't heard of him when I bought the picture, but it was $75,000. And this is a striking, really beautiful painting of, you see Christ visiting the deathbed of his stepfather, Saint Joseph, and God the Father coming down with the angels and surrounded by the other saints. And it's a real extravaganza, sort of a biblical Busby Berkeley production. But it is ravishing. It was beautifully, in beautiful condition. Barabino was a maker and seller of artist pigments, of paints, in Milan in the 1620s. So this painting has survived the test of time in beautiful condition because, I think because he was such a, he understood technique and he understood materials and he knew what to do with them. And unlike someone like, say, Leonardo da Vinci, who was a failure at trying to paint with oil paint on wet plaster, for example. So at any rate, this was a masterpiece by an unknown artist, but I took a risk at buying the picture because it wasn't Leonardo or it wasn't even Bernardo Strozzi. It was Simone Barabino, but it was $75,000, and it turned out to be a prescient buy. But on the right, now on the other end of the spectrum, is Sandro Botticelli. So this great Botticelli, it is coming on the market. It can be yours in January for around 80 million. I know this painting. It's been on loan to both the National Gallery of Art and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and it is in pristine condition for a painting, at the turn of the 16th century. It's in pristine condition. And it is an arresting subject. And it's by none other than Botticelli. It's estimated 80 million. Paintings at that level and that sort of high altitude, artists such as, artists only like Klimt and Van Gogh have achieved, in terms of public record, achieved prices like 80 or so million. Jeff Koons, who's the most valuable, I think still is the most valuable contemporary artist, brought a couple of years ago 91 million at auction. But at any rate, and of course, we can't fail but to mention the Leonardo da Vinci, Salvator Mundi, which sold for $450 plus million several years ago. And that was a complete outlier. But old masters generally, even though whether you're looking at the $75,000 Discovery on the left or on the right, an $80 million Botticelli, it's an undervalued and underappreciated area of the market, and I encourage you to think about it. And you have great resources in this town. You have the Art Institute of Chicago with one of the great collections in the country, in the world indeed, and you can learn a lot. O is for online. So access is greater than ever. The global corona pandemic has forced auctions, art fairs, galleries, and museums to take their activities online. Auction houses hold live streaming auctions. Art fairs from Frieze to Art Basel went virtual, with each gallery, and you see an example on the right, featuring online viewing rooms. Museums present exhibitions and educational programs on Zoom. I hear the Evanston Art Center has had online exhibitions. So it has forced us to be more forward, but the great thing is that it has allowed us to be more accessible. So that's a really exciting thing. And these are lessons from which we will not retreat. We will only see more of this going forward. P is for post-war, yet another area of the art market. These are artists born between 1911 and 1944, that generation coming of age just after the Second World War. On the left, you have David Hockney's The Splash, which early this year bought $30 million. And on the right, you see Ed Ruscha's great sort of classic Annie, which brought $23 million earlier this year. So post-war, again, very, very high end, if you will. R is for return on investment. So let's look, speaking of the market and speaking of art as an investment, let's look at returns on the art market from 1985 to 2018. The art market's return has been relatively in line with that of fixed income. This is according to a recent report by Citi. You see the first bar is art, just the overall catch-all category of art. That has achieved a return over these years of around 5.3%. The next bar you see is contemporary art alone. Now that on its own achieves considerably better, about 7.5%. And I compare this with the two other bars of bonds, and this is in particular, this is developed country investment grade bonds at 6.5%. So contemporary art outperforms that type of bond investment, those types of investments. But then on the final bar is developed market equities, which deliver just short of 10%. And again, real estate delivers about 8.2% over the years 1985 to 2018. So this gives you an idea. The art market, art is a player. It is an investment. It is an asset class now. But as we know, it's more volatile. It may be more volatile than bonds, but it certainly is sure and steady. S is for sell at auction. So I had to have an auction slide, of course. There are, of course, important, major auction houses in the United States and abroad. We think of the obvious ones: Sotheby's, Christie's, Phillips, Bonhams. Chicago has its own auction house, Heinemann, in terms of major reach and impact. This shows that the total amount of money spent on fine art and design in the first half of this year, of 2020, was $2.9 billion. This is, however, almost 60% less than in the equivalent period last year. But what I want you to take from this chart is you see this steep upward trajectory in January and February, and then of course this bottoming out March and April. And then what you see, a huge upward trajectory in May and June. So what I want you to take away from this is resilience. The art market has been pretty resilient, even in this catastrophic pandemic period. U, see, I skipped a few letters. U is for ultra contemporary. So I love this category. This pertains to artists born after 1974, and bringing anywhere from $20,000 to up to $1 million. And I'm giving you two favorite examples of mine, two favorite artists of mine, and they're both Chicago-based. So again, keeping this Chicago-centric. On the left, you have Asaf Efron, who is a photo-based artist, just had a really nice show at the MCA, and he is particularly interested. His artistic practice is somewhere in between architecture and installation. He's interested in architecture as a subject, and here you see one of my favorite photographs, and this is the foyer of the Mies van der Rohe designed designed by Mies van der Rohe, sorry, of the Arts Club of Chicago. On the right, you have Nate Young, really one of the extraordinary artists, I think, working in Chicago today. His work is all about family and the weight of history and the weight of one's personal history on certainly his own work, his own life. He deals with stories, which I can't go into detail about right now, but the legacy of his great-grandfather, and there's a horse that figures into this rather sad story. And so what you see here is this beautiful reliquary-like vitrine that Nate has carved. This is a piece in the installation right now of his show at the Driehaus Museum. I urge you to go see it. It's up through January. A Tale of Today, the second in the edition, after Yinka Shonibare. It's Nate Young and Mika Horabuchi. Mika's work is really fantastic too. And but the piece on the right replicates the Gilded Age woodwork of the mansion. And in this beautiful vitrine or reliquary that he's created is this installation with horse bones that evokes, these bones evoke the story of his great-grandfather and the grandfather's escape in the Great Migration up north. So that's ultra contemporary. That's you. We're coming close to the end. Because remember, I couldn't find a Y. But W is for works on paper. This is an area I really think, for those of you who want to collect, haven't started to collect, or even, you know, regardless of whether you're at in collecting, it's an easy entry point, but it's also richly rewarding, and lots of sophisticated and indeed affluent collectors collect works on paper. On the left is a lino cut by Börje Townsend. He was a Swedish immigrant and started the art department from Stockholm to the United States. I think he came through Chicago, but he wound up in Kansas in a small town called Lindsborg, a Swedish immigrant town. It's where I grew up for some years. And this is a print that speaking of online auctions, this is a print I bid on and lost, unfortunately, but it went for $550. So again, entry-level, works on paper, affordable, but great stories, beautiful images. Think of Börje Townsend as an American post-impressionist. He painted the great Midwest landscape in ways that are, as you can see here, so evocative. Or on the right, photography is another good option. Photography is affordable, can be very affordable. In this case, this is Alfred Stieglitz, the great gallerist and artist. His photograph of his wife, Georgia O'Keeffe's hand. It's called Georgia O'Keeffe Hand and Wheel. This just brought $400,000 at auction. So from, you know, the affordable to the, well, maybe affordable to some, not all of us, but works on paper, worth thinking about, can be very affordable. Photography is very accessible, but runs the gamut, of course. And finally, Z is for Zoom. You knew I had to do this. I had to reference this. So much of the art world's activities during the global pandemic crisis has shifted to Zoom's digital platform, whether in the form of meetings, educational programs such as this lecture today, or art fairs that are online. So that takes us to the end of our ABCs. No, wait, there are 3 more Cs. Very exciting. What are they? First let me get this. C is for conclusion. So what have we learned today? Art is an investment. It is an investment, whether you're pouring lots of money into it or not. It's an investment of time, knowledge, and passion. Secondly, buy now. I think there are deals to be had, and I'll tell you, dealers want to sell art right now. Buy smart. Enjoy the learning that comes with collecting. Educate yourself, educate your eye. Next, art as an investment comes with some considerations. Now, whether you're collecting art as an investment to diversify a portfolio, achieve a steady return, to use as collateral, which is increasingly the case, or as a charitable gift tax benefit, it is illiquid and has significant carrying costs. Art isn't like other investments. You don't hang your bonds and securities on your wall. It possesses the power to change your life in real yet intangible ways. You will be the richer for it, and I don't mean just financially. But as I said, there are these considerations. It's not a short-term investment. No flipping. Let your collection mature like a fine wine. Think of it as an asset that may be passed down to your children, like real estate. And finally, unless you're investing in blue chip Picassos, Warhols, and Hockneys, and even if you are, like what you buy. There's another C. I had to add this. It's for calm, as in keep calm and carry on, and I want you all to stay well. Oh wait, there's one final C. C is for contact me. You can call me, you can email me, and you can certainly find me at townsendartadvisory.com. Again, Paula, Leslie, Debbie, thank you for having me here. Thank you, the Evanston Arts Center, and this has been a real privilege. Thank you.